They broke into my house and changed my locks while I was at work. I stood frozen at my own front door, key in hand, watching helplessly as the HOA president's text flashed on my screen. "Come get your new keys." These arrogant tyrants had no idea who they were messing with. They'd just targeted the security engineer who designed their entire system. Every camera, every sensor, every access point, it all ran through me. Revenge would be digital, devastating, and perfectly documented. Wherever you're watching this unfold from, you're about to witness what happens when bureaucrats mess with the wrong homeowner. My name is Logan Foster. I'm 35 years old, and until 6 months ago, I lived peacefully in Pine Grove Estates. After serving in the military, where I specialized in cybersecurity, I transitioned into civilian work as a security systems engineer. I design high-end systems for corporations, banks, and ironically, residential communities like mine. 3 years ago, under different HOA leadership, our neighborhood hired my company to install a comprehensive security solution. What they didn't realize was that buried in page 18 of the contract was a clause allowing me limited ongoing access to monitor performance and make improvements. It was standard practice for me, but clearly, the new board hadn't read the fine print. The problem started when Deborah Maxwell became HOA president. Within weeks, she began enacting ridiculous new rules, supposedly to maintain neighborhood aesthetics and property values. One rule particularly affected me. It prohibited working from home after 6 p.m., claiming computer screens disrupted the evening ambience. As someone who frequently worked with international clients across time zones, compliance was impossible. I politely explained this at an HOA meeting, pointing out the rule was unreasonable and likely unenforceable. Deborah didn't appreciate being challenged publicly. Her eyes narrowed as she responded, "Here at Pine Grove Estates, we have rules for a reason. If you don't like them, perhaps you should consider moving elsewhere." The thinly veiled threat hung in the air as other residents shifted uncomfortably. To my surprise, Harold Bennett, a 72-year-old retired teacher who lived 3 houses down, stood up shakily. "Young Foster fixed my electrical issues last winter without charging a penny," he said. "Don't you go bothering good people." His voice quivered, but remained determined. Deborah's smile tightened, and I knew I'd made an enemy. The harassment began almost immediately. I received violation notices for absurd infractions: grass a 1/4 inch too tall, curtains not matching approved color schemes, a garden hose improperly stored. I photographed everything, filed the notices, and refused to pay the mounting fines. I knew my rights, and these were clearly targeted acts of retaliation. After my 3rd refusal, I received a text from Deborah: "We'll be taking stronger measures if this continues." That same evening, I noticed Gregory Wilson, Deborah's deputy, installing something near my property line. Using my security expertise, I discovered it was a camera pointed directly at my house, the first major violation of my privacy. What bothered me most wasn't just the invasion itself, but the calculated escalation. This wasn't random harassment. It followed a distinct pattern I recognized from my security work: establish arbitrary rules, document violations regardless of validity, create a paper trail justifying increasingly aggressive interventions. It was textbook intimidation, and I'd seen it used by corrupt officials in war zones during my military service. The question wasn't whether Deborah would escalate further, but when and how severely. I began documenting every interaction meticulously, sensing this would eventually require legal intervention. My neighbors were increasingly divided into 2 camps. Some, like the Millers next door, stopped making eye contact entirely, clearly afraid of becoming targets themselves. Others, like Harold, made a point of waving conspicuously whenever they saw me, small acts of defiance against the growing atmosphere of surveillance and control. The community that had once felt like home was transforming into something darker, with whispered conversations replacing friendly chats and suspicious glances replacing welcoming smiles. Even the neighborhood children seemed to pick up on the tension, no longer cutting across my lawn as they had freely done before. When I returned home that night, I looked at the photo of my late wife, Amber, on the dresser. She'd passed away 2 years ago after a long battle with cancer. During her final days, she made me promise not to let anyone control my life again, referring to her controlling parents who had tried to dictate our relationship from the beginning. "You're not going to win this round, Deborah," I whispered to myself. My phone pinged with an email notification from Amanda Garcia, the newly appointed HOA secretary. Asterisk, "I think you should know they're planning something with your house this Wednesday. Be careful." Asterisk. I immediately called Megan Thompson, my neighbor and a civil rights attorney. "Document everything," she advised, "and set up your own surveillance. If they're planning something, you need evidence." That night, I installed hidden cameras at my entryways and windows, connecting them to my phone for remote monitoring. As I worked, my eyes welled up with tears, remembering my promise to Amber. This wasn't just about standing up to a power-hungry HOA president anymore. It was about keeping my word to the woman I loved. Little did I know how quickly things would escalate, or how my professional skills would soon become my greatest weapon in this neighborhood war. Wednesday morning, I deliberately left for work earlier than usual, making sure my hidden cameras were functioning properly. Around 10 a.m., my phone vibrated with a text from Amanda. "Emergency HOA inspection, reported gas leak from your house." I don't believe it, but they're using the emergency access clause. I immediately opened my security app and watched in real time as Deborah, Gregory, and a man I didn't recognize approached my front door. Deborah stood with her hands on her hips, projecting authority, while Gregory clutched a clipboard. The third man carried a toolbox and looked uncomfortable in the blazing sun as he examined my lock. "You sure this is legal?" the man asked, glancing nervously at Deborah. "I don't smell any gas." I recognized him as a local locksmith. His truck with Cooper's locks was parked at the curb. Deborah's voice came through clearly on my hidden microphone. "We have the emergency entry clause in our bylaws agreement. Just do your job. We'll handle the inspection inside." The locksmith, Ryan Cooper, according to his name tag, hesitated briefly before beginning to remove my locks. I watched, seething but also calculating, as they replaced my perfectly good locks with new ones. After Ryan finished, Deborah and Gregory entered my home while the locksmith waited outside, looking increasingly uncomfortable. Through my indoor cameras, I observed them moving through my house with disturbing familiarity. They weren't checking for gas leaks, they were searching through my belongings. "Find anything we can use to force compliance or make a move," Deborah instructed as she rifled through papers on my desk. Gregory opened drawers and cabinets, photographing contents with his phone. I felt violated, angry, and strangely powerful all at once. These people had no idea who they were dealing with, or that their every move and word was being recorded. After 20 minutes of unsuccessful searching, they left, locking the new door behind them. Ryan lingered momentarily, looking back at my house with what appeared to be genuine regret before driving away. I rushed home, my mind racing with both rage and strategic planning. Standing before my door with a useless key was infuriating, but Megan's advice echoed in my head. Don't let emotions dictate your actions. Gather evidence first. I received another text from Deborah, practically gloating. There was an emergency gas inspection today. Come to the HOA office for your new keys and to discuss additional violations we've discovered. I took several deep breaths before driving to the community center where the HOA office was located. I needed to appear surprised and concerned, not like someone who had watched the entire illegal entry unfold on his phone. Deborah sat behind her desk with an expression of smug authority as I entered her office. "Mr. Foster, we had to conduct an emergency gas inspection today after reports from a neighbor. For community safety, we've changed your locks. Here are your new keys." She slid a set across the desk while handing me a folder stuffed with papers. "We've also documented several new violations during our inspection. Unauthorized electronic equipment, non-regulation window treatments, and potential business activities outside permitted hours. Continued noncompliance could result in significant fines or even property liens. Her thinly veiled threat hung in the air between us. "You entered my home illegally," I replied, keeping my voice steady. There was no gas leak. This was trespassing and harassment. Deborah's smile never faltered. "Prove it." "We have a signed emergency inspection authorization from the board. Gas leaks are serious safety concerns." I accepted the new keys without further argument, not revealing what I knew. As I turned to leave, I couldn't resist one parting shot. I designed systems to catch violators, not to help them violate privacy. Deborah frowned. "What did you just say?" I smiled slightly. "Nothing important, just a security professional's philosophy." In the parking lot, I nearly collided with Ryan Cooper, the locksmith, who seemed to be waiting for me. "Hey, I'm really sorry about that back there," he said, glancing toward the office to ensure we weren't observed. "I need the work, but what happened didn't feel right." I studied his face more carefully. "Ryan Cooper from Better Locks before the rebrand, right?" His eyes widened in surprise. "How did you know that?" I extended my hand. 5 years ago, major data loss incident. I was the security engineer who recovered your client database after the ransomware attack. Recognition dawned on his face. "Oh my God, that was you? You saved my business." He trailed off, looking genuinely distressed. I saw an opportunity forming. "No worries," I said quietly. "But maybe you could help me with something else." I called Megan that evening, sharing the video evidence and updating her on the situation. "This is clear illegal entry and harassment," she confirmed. "But we need to understand their true motives before taking action. This feels like more than just power-tripping HOA nonsense." I agreed, explaining my suspicion that something bigger was happening. "I'm going to increase surveillance and gather more information," I told her. "I still have limited access to the community security system from when I installed it. There's a small clause in the contract they clearly didn't read." Megan cautioned me to be careful. "Stay within legal boundaries. Monitor public areas only." I promised I would, but privately resolved to use every tool at my disposal. This wasn't just about my house anymore. This was about stopping corruption and abuse of power in my community. I spent the next few days meticulously studying the HOA bylaws, identifying inconsistencies and vague clauses that Deborah was exploiting. Using my existing access to the community security system, perfectly legal under my maintenance agreement, I began monitoring the HOA office and other public areas. I was careful to avoid anything that could be construed as illegal surveillance, focusing only on common spaces where there was no expectation of privacy. During one late-night session reviewing security footage, I struck gold. A conversation between Deborah and Gregory in the supposedly empty HOA office, unaware the system was actively recording. "We need at least 5 more families to sell before next month," Deborah said, her voice clear through the audio. Gregory shuffled some papers nervously. "But they don't want to sell. Foster is especially problematic. He's encouraging others to resist." Deborah slammed her hand on the desk. "Then make them want to sell. Increase HOA fees. Find more violations. Make living here unbearable. Westland Development needs these properties to complete the acquisition. And I'm not missing my $50,000 bonus." I nearly fell out of my chair. This wasn't just petty harassment. It was a coordinated effort to force homeowners out for a development deal, with Deborah receiving kickbacks. I immediately backed up the footage to multiple secure locations. My investigation was interrupted around midnight by a security alert from my home system. Switching to my personal cameras, I watched as an unknown man approached my house and began attempting to disable one of my outdoor cameras. I smiled grimly as my defense protocols activated. Floodlights blazed on and a loud automated warning blared through exterior speakers. Asterisk security breach detected. All activities are being recorded. Authorities will be notified if you do not leave the premises immediately. Asterisk. The intruder panicked, dropping his tools as he fled. When I retrieved the abandoned equipment the next morning, I found a branded screwdriver from Elite Security, the company Deborah had recently hired to upgrade neighborhood security. What disturbed me most wasn't the attempted sabotage itself, but how it revealed the expanding scope of Deborah's operation. She wasn't just using HOA resources and authority anymore. She was bringing in outside contractors to do her dirty work. This suggested both deeper financial backing and a willingness to cross increasingly serious legal and ethical lines. I needed to understand the full extent of her network. Using digital forensics tools from my professional kit, I traced the service history of the Elite Security screwdriver through its serial number. The company had been founded just 3 months ago, with incorporation papers listing a primary contact whose address matched Deborah's sister's home. The connections were becoming clearer and more disturbing by the hour. The pattern of intimidation was expanding beyond me as well. During my morning walk, I noticed the Johnsons at number 17 loading boxes into their car. "Moving out already?" I asked casually, knowing they'd only arrived 6 months ago. Mrs. Johnson looked around nervously before answering. "Each family to leave in 2 months, each one selling well below market value to entities we now suspected were Westland Development shell companies. The HOA fined us $2,000 for unauthorized landscape modifications after we planted a memorial tree for our daughter. When we couldn't pay immediately, they threatened to put a lien on our house. Each one selling well below market value to entities I now suspected were Westland Development shell companies." The pieces were fitting together into a picture of organized neighborhood exploitation. I arranged to meet Ryan at a coffee shop outside our neighborhood, where he provided invaluable information. "She's had me change locks on at least 3 other houses in the past 2 months, he confessed, always with some emergency excuse: water leaks, gas problems, electrical issues. I felt uneasy, but I needed the business. He slid a folder across the table. "Here are copies of all the work orders and invoices. They were all signed by Deborah, not by the homeowner." I thanked him, adding, "You're doing the right thing. These people are abusing their power to force residents out of their homes." Ryan nodded solemnly. "I know. My parents lost their retirement home to a similar scheme in Florida. I should have recognized the pattern sooner." I was piecing together the evidence when Amanda texted me, "emergency board meeting called. They're scheduling water and power outage for essential maintenance at your address this weekend. This was clearly their next move to make my home uninhabitable. I would need to stay at a hotel, but my surveillance would continue remotely. I packed a small bag, making sure my systems had backup power and cellular connections independent of the house utility. Sure enough, Friday evening, my power was cut, and by Saturday morning, the water was off too. My cameras caught Deborah and Gregory entering my home again, this time installing what appeared to be listening devices in several rooms. Their escalation was making them careless and providing me with more evidence. What they didn't know was that I had installed a completely independent secondary security system running on its own power supply and cellular connection. While they planted their bugs, my hidden cameras recorded them from angles they never thought to check. Deborah was becoming increasingly agitated, barking orders at Gregory, "Find something we can use against him, financial records, anything illegal, even pornography. I don't care what it is, as long as it discredits him completely, **. Gregory seemed less enthusiastic. "This is getting risky, Deborah. Breaking and entering, planting devices, we could face serious charges." Her response was chilling, "only if we get caught. And who's going to catch us? We control the HOA, the security company, and soon the entire neighborhood. Stop worrying and keep searching, **. While monitoring the situation from my hotel room, I received an unexpected piece of intelligence from Amanda. A screenshot of an email from Westland Development to Deborah referencing a special payment of $50,000 upon completion of the acquisition. Amanda's message read, "I'm an accountant, and their numbers are very dirty." This was the smoking gun linking Deborah directly to the development scheme. I decided it was time to move from defense to offense, to use my security expertise to set a trap that would expose everything. I called Megan and Amanda to my hotel room to formulate a plan. As we strategized, Megan revealed something personal. I lost my home in my previous neighborhood because I couldn't afford the suddenly increased HOA fees. That's why I became a civil rights attorney. What Deborah's doing isn't just unethical, it's illegal. By Sunday evening, I had developed a comprehensive counterattack. First, I would document every HOA violation against me and other residents. Second, I would use Ryan's evidence to establish a pattern of unauthorized entry. Third, I would leverage Amanda's inside access to gather financial records. But the masterstroke would be using my security expertise to catch Deborah and Gregory confessing on camera. As I finalized the details, a notification popped up on my laptop. Gregory was accessing the HOA database late at night, looking up information on board members. This was unexpected. Was there dissension in the ranks? I zoomed in on the screen capture to see what he was viewing, contact information for several board members who weren't part of Deborah's inner circle. It seemed Gregory might be having second thoughts, a potential weakness I could exploit. I returned home Monday morning to find my utilities restored, but my sense of security permanently damaged. Every corner of my house felt violated after witnessing Deborah and Gregory pawing through my belongings. I methodically swept for the listening devices they'd planted, finding 6 in total, in the living room, kitchen, office, and even my bedroom. Instead of removing them, I left them in place, but set up signal jammers that would activate whenever I needed private conversations. They've gotten into my house, I told Megan over coffee in a nearby diner where we couldn't be overheard. But they have no idea what they've walked into. She nodded, sliding a legal document across the table. I've prepared the initial paperwork for a civil suit, but we need more concrete evidence connecting Deborah to Westland Development before proceeding. The violations to my home went beyond just the security implications. There was something deeply personal about having strangers rifle through my possessions. In my bedroom, they'd opened Amber's memory box, touching the cards and small mementos I'd preserved of our 15 years together. The thought of Deborah's manicured hands on my late wife's handwritten letters filled me with a cold rage I hadn't experienced since my combat days. This wasn't just about property anymore. They had crossed into sacred territory. I studied the security footage again, noting how they lingered over family photos, making snide comments about my sad little shrine to Amber. I would make them regret those words, but I needed to channel my anger into strategic action. Using my expertise in digital forensics, I created a fake email that appeared to come from Westland Development, sending it to Deborah's personal address, regarding our previous discussion and financial arrangement. We need to confirm details of the special payment method. Please respond with your preferred offshore account information. It was deliberately vague, but concerning enough to provoke a reaction. Within 20 minutes, Deborah was on the phone with Gregory. Panic evident in her voice as she paced her home office, captured perfectly by the community security cameras in the common area outside her window. They emailed about the money. Someone knows. Gregory tried to calm her. It's probably just standard procedure. Don't panic. I'll come over. Their subsequent conversation, which I recorded through the HOA office security system, provided damning evidence. If anyone finds out we're getting kickbacks to force people out, we're finished, Deborah hissed.